I don't think there is any getting away from the fact that this is one of the biggest weekends of the year in terms of international rugby. And I'm not saying that just because it is officially the start of the November test window, even though most of the teams played last weekend anyway. I'm saying that because Saturday night, Paris, Stade de France, France against the Springboks. It is going to be epic. It is one of those fixtures that you have circled in your calendar for a long, long time. It is one that I think the Springboks will certainly have had circled for a long, long time, and no doubt the French as well. So welcome back to the channel. I thought start of the week, Monday, let's build up to this game. I've got a few points that I'll go through. I want to look back as well on that quarter-final from the World Cup a couple of years ago. But Springbok fans, give me your views down below. Does Saturday determine who the number one team in the world is? Or are loads of you hearing me say that, seeing the title of this video and thinking, hang on a minute, we're the back-to-back world champions, we're back-to-back rugby championship champions. One result is not going to determine that we are still the number one side in the world. Let me know. I'm going to get onto that question at the end of the video. But this is, without doubt, absolutely mouth-watering. And I'm incredibly fortunate in my job that I get to go to a lot of rugby, and I'm going to be at Twickenham for the England game, which is going to be really interesting as well. But even for me, being at Twickenham, being at the England game, being able to be there and report on it, I'm kind of jealous of anyone that's able to be at this match. Because Paris will be buzzing, absolutely buzzing. And I wanted to start off with that quarterfinal in 2023, that World Cup quarterfinal. I was lucky enough to be there in Paris for that weekend. The Ireland against New Zealand, France against South Africa, two of the great games of rugby, back-to-back World Cup quarterfinals, just tense, incredibly high skill level, and in terms of the Springbok victory, a 1-point win in just one of the great epic encounters. And in fact, I think I'm right in saying that my most viewed video on the channel that I've ever had, by some distance, is the review I did from outside the Stade de France after that game. I think it's the only video I've done which has got over 100,000 views. So it was a nice moment for the channel as well. It was an epic moment in terms of rugby, and it was just an incredible moment for the Springboks and that journey to the World Cup final and the World Cup victory with all those 1-point wins. But that game was brilliant. And when I look back at that game, there's probably a few different things that stand out. The quality and physicality and intensity of the whole occasion is absolutely one of them. I think you struggle to look past, in terms of individual moments, that Cheslin Kolbe charge down conversion on Tomo Ramos from the right-hand touchline. When you look at the final score, the 1-point game. And on the Ruck today, which the podcast from the Times and Sunday Times, I also host it, but you should go and listen to the latest episode for those of you that haven't searched it out already, because we had Stephen Kitsoff on, double World Cup winner, and he was really fascinating on the preparation that goes into those matches for South Africa. As someone that has been there and done it, he spoke about how detailed they are on loads of different areas of the game. And part of that was the amount of time in terms of charging down kicks from hands as well, not just the conversion, but what they'd looked at to end up having a moment like that. It was really interesting. So go and listen to that on the podcast. He also spoke about his injury, which sounds absolutely mad. I know all the Springbok fans will be well aware of that, but that forced him to retire earlier this year. Loads of interesting stuff. So it's the Ruck, the podcast from the Times and Sunday Times. Do go and check that out. In particular, that detail on the Cheslin Kolbe charge down, because that was really fascinating. And I suppose one of the areas as well in that game that I'd actually forgotten about, but when I look back on it, was how quickly France started and the way in which the Springboks were able to hold on and end up winning by such a narrow margin in France in the quarterfinal. Yeah, brilliant. So I'm hoping for a similar spectacle this weekend. In terms of the French, from a form and selection point of view, it's really hard to know where France are, because we basically don't see them. We don't see them at full strength or anywhere near full strength since March and the end of the Six Nations. The way that they tend to do those summer tours is it's a very rotated side. They went to New Zealand and were still really competitive against the All Blacks. They lost those matches, but they were super competitive in a really understrength side. But it means, where are France? Where are France at this moment in time? I feel like we have less of a barometer. We have less of a kind of idea of where they currently find themselves, what sort of form they're going to be in, than we do with a lot of the other, certainly Northern Hemisphere or all the nations really, definitely the Northern Hemisphere ones as well, who, England, yes, they were missing Lions players, but still had a pretty strong squad out in Argentina, for example. So what sort of France are we going to see? That for me is one of the big question marks. And are they able to rectify the speed at which they started that World Cup quarter-final, which was the last time these two teams met? And how much is that a motivation for them this week? Because make no mistake about it, that World Cup from a French point of view was geared up for them winning their first ever World Cup on home soil at the Stade de France with a generational talent in Antoine Dupont, with the talent they have in that team. And it didn't happen. And I'd imagine there's going to be a few of them that have scars from that match. In terms of the Springboks ahead of the game, well, I suppose for me, one of the big things that I'm intrigued in is, who does Rassie go with at 10? I talk all the time on this channel about Springbok rotation, which I think is incredibly impressive in the way in which they've done it. I think other nations are trying to replicate them in terms of how they build in between World Cups and build depth and build versatility with players playing across different positions. But Rassie, when he tends to get to these sorts of games, same with away matches against New Zealand in the Rugby Championship, there are certain matches where you get to see what he views as his strongest team at this moment in time. For most of the positions in the Springboks, I think we know what they are, but who does he go with as his 10? Has Sasha Feinberg Umgomazulu, with his performances this year, become the number one? Now, I think he has, quite comfortably actually. But it still wouldn't shock me if you saw Andre Pollard there. I'm hoping we see Sasha, because I know he's played really well in the Rugby Championship. He has answered so many questions. He's been so impressive this year. But this is another step up, I think, against this French team and away from home against this French team, for how he's able to control the game, influence the game, impact it, all that sort of stuff. So I'm hoping we see him at 10, and I think it would be a really interesting challenge for him at this moment in time, at this point in his career, at this point in his international season, for how he's able to do that. But I've got no doubt, I think this is going to be the strongest Springbok 23 that Rassie is going to be able to pick. I think it's the closest we would get to, if the World Cup final was tomorrow or was this weekend, what would the Springboks be? That's going to be the squad that we see this weekend. And 10 for me is probably the position with the most question marks on it. What about you? Do you agree, or are there other positions that you think is going to be pretty telling? So what about it? Is this game going to determine who the number one team in the world is? I think they're the two best teams. I mean, France won the Six Nations. South Africa are clearly the best team in the Southern Hemisphere. Clearly the number one team in the world at the moment. If France were to beat them, would they therefore take their crown? Do you know what? I'm not sure that they would. I think it would add to the kind of narrative and feeling and perhaps slight rivalry between these two nations. But in the same way that, do you remember last year when Ireland went to South Africa, they had a 2-test series, didn't they? Which was mad that we didn't get a decider. And they split the games one apiece. You kind of looked at it and said, well, who's the best team here? And now we find ourselves later. Ireland have declined a little bit. They're possibly ageing. The Springboks are clearly right at the top. I think losing away in Paris to France at the moment wouldn't necessarily automatically knock the Springboks off that number one perch, but it would certainly give us a little bit of a perspective on, where France are at the moment and how close they could be to the Boks. Overall, I just hope it is as epic as it has the potential to be. This is what international rugby is all about. These sorts of games are what international rugby is all about. So exciting, two top quality sides. The atmosphere, I think, is going to be brilliant. And it could genuinely go either way. I think there is a mystery to France. I think it is a Springbok team who have been brilliant this year, sensational. But Paris is an incredibly tough, difficult place to go at the moment against this team. So who wins? Give me your view down below. This is the first video of the week. I'm sure there will be plenty more on France against the Springboks coming your way throughout the rest of the week. But I'll leave it there. Give me your views down below. Like the video as well. And if you've made it this far, I would love it if you hit that subscribe button. Subscribe to the channel and you will not miss a thing. Appreciate you watching. See you in the next one.